Hey everyone, super excited to be here and going to go through how you can be the most informed voter that you can be. This is really straightforward. It does take a little bit of time, but not like hours, but I think it's worth it if you want your voice to be heard, right? And you want to make sure that you're not just going blindly into the voting booth, or if you're fortunate like me, you get to have your ballot out in front of you and you can go online and just look at the candidates and kind of research them as you go. That's what I do. I research them as I go to make sure that my vote is in line with how I want to be represented. Now, this is one of the most important, if not the ultimate power that us citizens have. And so we should be using our voice. We should be using our power in order to make sure that our government and our legislators are representing us. That is what our nation was founded on. To not vote it's a bizarre concept to me, to be quite honest, because basically what you're saying is you don't care what happens to you. And I just can't see anyone having that stance, that they don't care what happens to them. They don't care what happens in their community. They don't care how they're treated. They don't care, this all boils down to the very basics and very fundamentals of what it means to be a citizen of the United States of America. And without getting too patriotic, that's the power we have. We are a government of the people, for the people, by the people. That is because we vote. If we don't vote, that sentiment, that declaration does not exist. And so to not vote is essentially saying, I don't want a government of the people, for the people, by the people. Which is, again, a bizarre concept. So please vote. And this is how you can do so. I know it can be intimidating. I'm going to give you some resources that hopefully will help make it less intimidating, be a little bit fun, and let's get started. So on my little PowerPoint here, just some basics, right? So we have representatives and senators, and we have these on the federal level as well as the state level. For Utah, currently, our federal Senate representatives are Hatch and Lee. Those in the House, we have 4 representatives in the United States House of Representatives in Congress, and that is Bishop Stewart, Curtis, and Love. I am in Mia Love's 4th district, and she is up for election this year, and she is being opposed by Ben McAdams, who is a former mayor of Salt Lake City. I'm pretty sure I know how I'm going to vote, but we'll just go through a little bit more. So how do you know who represents you? How do you know what district you're in, who your representative is? I know because I call them and I ask them for things, which is something that you should do. For example, I put them in my contacts list on my phone. They are under Utah state legislators. And then you just call them when you need to tell them, vote this way, I am opposed to this policy, I would like to meet with you. That they're your employee. You are their boss. So find out who they are, put them in your phone, make sure you have a connection with your employees. So you can do a couple of things here. So you can go to house.gov, and I'll just pull it up here because I already have it right here. House.gov and find your representative. Look up your zip code. So that's a random zip code. We'll just see what's going on here. And this is Congress. So that zip code is covered by Representative Chris Stewart, and he's in the 2nd district. So that's federal. State level, I go to, for example, le.utah.gov. And the reason that works for me is because that's our legislature actually has a very good website, which I'm grateful for. So if I come over here and I want to know who my legislators are, I can find by an address. So let's just put in a zip code. Let's do the same one. That's pretty cool, actually. So this is the map. I don't want to do that. I want to go down here. That was the district map. Let's try this again. Okay, so I don't know whose that is, but all right. Okay, so for example, I think that's actually one of my representatives' address. That's might be this guy. For this address that is random, I don't know, I just put that in there for randomness. This address, your representative is Joel Briscoe. Your state senator is Gene Davis. You can click on them to find out more about their history. So this goes through the committees that this guy's been on, gives the phone number and address. Our legislators are actually very accessible, and that makes me very happy. So they put all of their information on here so that you can actually get a hold of them. You'll usually talk to one of their staff members, but that's as good as talking to them. So these are just some of the things that you can find out by using the le.utah.gov. Now each state is probably going to have a different resource, and that's where your Google Foo will come in handy. So let's move me back up here for a minute. So should be pretty straightforward to find out who represents you. Now, how do you know who's up for vote? Who's actually on your ballot? What's going on there? There are a couple of different options. I prefer to use this website, which again is Utah specific, vote.utah.gov. That's going to be where you can find your ballot information. So if I were to click here and put in my address and my name, this is what would happen. There would be voter information here, my addresses, which obviously I'm not going to share online. But the important thing here is that I can see a sample ballot. So let's see what that looks like. So if I click on that sample ballot here, it pulls up this. This is pretty awesome. And hopefully there are multiple states that have something like this. You could try Googling sample ballot, but I can see here, these are the ones who are on the ballot for Senate. Now this is the Senate seat that Orrin Hatch is retiring from. So we have the two main ones are Mitt Romney and Jenny Wilson. And let's see, just because she's a little unknown, let's see what's going on with Jenny Wilson. I can click on her profile. That's pretty awesome. This gives a summary of Jenny Wilson, what she's about, how to go to her website, how to email her. And I see that she will prioritize health care, compassionate immigration reform, and infrastructure improvements. These healthcare and immigration reform are two important topics to me. So I like her. Let's see what, close the page. Let's see Mitt Romney for fairness. He's apparently back in holiday, touting the Winter Olympic Games. He's nominee for president. Powers must be returned to the states. That's pretty typical. Believes in family values. Now, that's code a little bit for probably against same-sex marriage, for example. You got to read into it. So I'm probably not as excited about Mitt Romney as I am about Jenny Wilson. So that's part of what's on the sample ballot, right? And you can go through the different candidates, and that's, so this is a really great website. Now, if your state doesn't have such an awesome website, what I recommend is going to one or all of, well, obviously not Utah State Legislature if you're not in Utah, but these all have awesome resources for candidates, what they've done in the past, what they stand for. If you want to understand who you're voting for, these are the places that you go. So let's just look at a couple of these real quick. So ProPublica. Electionland. That seems promising. Let's go there. If you're having voting problems, they want to help you out. So it's a coalition of newsrooms around the country covering problems that prevent eligible voters from casting their ballots. So this is going to be helpful to make sure that you are eligible to vote and not being disenfranchised. This is a big deal. Do not be disenfranchised. Again, the power to vote. If it didn't matter, why would there be so many people working night and day to take that right away from you? Utilize your right, exercise your right to vote. It's essentially your job. Like, the one thing you have to do as a citizen is vote. The one thing. So that's ProPublica. I think it's a website that you will want to explore in further detail on your own. It's been shown to be overall unbiased. They are very fact-based. I think they present a well-rounded view of the issues, and in such a way that they let their reader decide how the reader feels, right? They're not a talking head. So that's a big reason why I like these guys. VoteSmart. So let's see, VoteSmart. So you can actually look up your politicians. Let's just do Mike Lee. Yep, this guy. So we can look at his bio. We can look at what he's voted on. This is pretty cool. Okay, we're going to continue the website. So he voted yes to Kavanaugh. That's very disappointing. But see, you can see how, what the issue that was up for vote was. You can research that, and then you can see how your representative voted, or your senator, your legislator. So votesmart.org, super, super useful. If this is the only thing you use, that's great. I'm just trying to give you a few examples of different things that you can use. So on this 2018 ballot, Utah has a few other things going on. I just want to take a minute. Other states will have ballot initiatives as well. So we've got medical cannabis, Prop 2, Prop 3 Medicaid expansion, Prop 4 redistricting. In a nutshell, medical cannabis, there's pushback from the LDS Church, there's pushback from the Utah Medical Association regarding medical cannabis, saying it's too easy for it to become recreational. So, alcohol is recreational, and that is a poison as far as I'm concerned. I have recovering alcoholics in my family, so cannabis is not terribly the big demon that everybody makes it out to be. So I am most likely going to be voting yes on Prop 2. Prop 3 is Medicaid expansion. Yeah, I want more people in Utah to have access to healthcare, so that's a pretty for sure yeah. Prop 4 is redistricting. Basically, this says that an independent committee composed of 3 Republicans, 3 Democrats, and 1 appointed by the governor, so 7, and it's most likely going to be, 4 to 3. But anyway, this committee is going to be in charge of drawing district lines however often. But basically, it helps prevent the gerrymandering. So I'm going to be in favor of this proposition. Ballot initiatives, the 101. Basically, they become law. They can do a few things. They can amend current legislative code, and they can advise legislators on public opinion. I was not sure about this at first, but this seems like a very good resource, ballotpedia.org. So if you go here, you can see what the ballots are for your state for your election year. And you'll see here they have Prop 2, Prop 3 is under the subject of healthcare. So you can actually go to ballotpedia.org, find out what these ballot initiatives are about. And this took me a minute actually to figure out, but when you click on the ballot, you can actually read the whole thing if you have an hour like I did to read. It was important. It's important to me to be informed on this Prop 2 medical marijuana initiative. So I read the actual text of Prop 2, and you find that on the side there, but it took me a minute to find, how the heck do I find the text? It's kind of a wonky website sometimes, but very good overall. So obviously you want to make sure that you're registered to vote. These are a few ways you can do that. This is where Google will help you in your state. I don't want to make it too Utah-centric, but that's where we are. That's where I am in Utah. And I feel like I don't want to belabor much of this, but to summarize, please vote. There are people that don't need to hear that. They know that they're going to vote. But I think that there's a lot of intimidation. And since we stopped putting civics on the mandatory public education list of topics, our education system and our self-education about our government, about voting, about why that matters, and about how the government is run has been a little lost. And honestly, I think that was intentional. If you have an uneducated population, they're a lot easier to control. It sounds alarmist, but it's true, right? So people are intimidated by the voting process, and, excuse me, and then they're going to not vote because it's complicated, or they don't know how to register, or they think that they're not eligible to vote, or, crazy stuff. So don't let that happen to you. Don't become disenfranchised. Take some time. Sit down. Even call your neighbors, call your friends, call any tech-savvy people that you know. Get a group together. We had, I was at a ballot party the other night. It was great. We had appetizers and drinks, and people brought their ballots, and they're like, hey, do you know about this? Oh, I know about that. Let me tell you about that. Do you know, make it a thing. Make it a social event. Get your vote out there. It's the one job you have to do as a citizen. The one job. Please, vote. These are a few resources. Oh, one of the things on the ballot that's daunting to me are the judges. So you can go to, for Utah, judges.utah.gov. Basically, there's a grading system, and it's done by an independent judicial thing, people who know how judges are supposed to be judging. because of judicial processes, and the judges get a grade. And essentially 90%, 95%, those are judges who are doing their jobs correctly. And so it's safe to vote yes to retain those judges. And so that's what I'll be doing, is I'll be going to judges.utah.gov to evaluate whether or not each judge on the ballot should be retained. That should take about 5 minutes. Not a big deal. But if you are wondering about registering to vote, Google research, how do I register to vote? In your state, there should be resources. Call a friend. Send me a tweet on Twitter. Don't become disenfranchised. This is your job. The one thing you as a U.S. citizen have to do, in my opinion, is vote. So on that note, I am going to close it there. Hopefully this was helpful. I didn't want to take too much time going through everything in detail, but if there are other questions, or if there's additional info you would like, leave me a comment. Again, please subscribe and rock the vote. See you later.